Wes du har min freund and welcome to yet another video. After having received a lot of requests to make a new law video, I have decided to reach for something that has always been very close to my heart, and that is the connection between Professor Tolkien's work and the Old English literature, or Old English poetry, Old English Anglo-Saxon culture in general, because I think that at this point it is not a secret that Tolkien was deeply and passionately in love with Old English Anglo-Saxon culture. He taught Old English at Oxford, after all, and he translated Beowulf and many other Old English poems to modern English. And one of the more direct references to Anglo-Saxons are, of course, the Rohirrim. And even more direct is a particular poem whose words, I believe, my dear friends, you know by heart at this point. They were recited by Aragorn upon arrival to Edoras. Of course, first he recited the poem in the tongue of the Rohirrim, and then a translation was provided. And it goes, "Where now are the horse and the rider? Where is the horn that was blowing? Where is the helm and the hauberk and the bright hair flowing? Where is the harp on the harp string and the red fire glowing? Where is the spring and the harvest and the tall corn growing? They have passed like rain on the mountain, like a wind in the meadow. The days have gone down in the west behind the hills into shadow. Who shall gather the smoke of the dead wood burning, or behold the flowing years from the sea returning?" Now we know, if you know anything about the law, that the poem was composed by an unknown poet. And that is, of course, also one of the many references to the original poem that inspired Tolkien into including this particular text into The Lord of the Rings, and that is The Wanderer, the Old English elegy that can be found in the Exeter book, which is an anthology of Old English poems, a very, very old manuscript that dates back to, the 10th century. And it is, of course, written in the alliterative verse. Now, if you are interested in the Old English alliterative verse of the Germanic peoples, I've got a video on my channel. Check it out. It's actually quite long, about 25 minutes, and I shall provide a link in the description down below. It deals with the technical aspect of alliterative verse, so we do not have to go into depth in this video. You can just check out the other one. What I want to focus on are the contents, which of course the author of this original poem is unknown, as many authors of the Old English poems, since they predate the poems actually being written down, since they were all only written down on parchment after the Christianization of the Anglo-Saxon England. First, of course, the poems were traded orally, and it talks about a man who was exiled from his land, and he remembers and laments the old days and what he had and what he lost. He thinks about his kinsmen, about his lord, about his king, about his friends, about the roof above his head that he had in the past, because these things were very important for people at the time, more so than they are nowadays. Because imagine you find yourself in medieval Europe, especially then the central and northern Western Europe. The weather was rough, the conditions were not really favorable, and if you find yourself without a roof above your head, without a full belly, and fire at heart, you will probably end up being dead very quickly. So this Eardstappa That's how the poet refers to the character. And by the way, that was very often translated as the wanderer, because it is a combination of the words, Old English words, earth, which means earth. And if you think about it, the word middanjerd in Old English could be translated into modern English as Middle Earth, right? And its Old Norse version of that word was then Midgard, the realm inhabited by men, by humans in Old Norse mythology. So then this Earthsteppa, this wanderer who wanders the earth, or the one who steps on the earth, then reflects upon the past and what he had and what he lost. But then, of course, because all those poems were written down probably by Anglo-Saxon monks, most of them contained very strong religious themes, religious elements. And so that he realizes, the Earthsteppa, the wanderer, that those things that he lost and the situation that he is in now are very common, and that they will pass. Because the final consolation will and only can be found in the embrace of God. And so that you can see here many aspects which then influence Tolkien to incorporate this poem into The Lord of the Rings. Not only his deep, deep love for the history of his own country, and for languages, dead languages, and the historical forms of Germanic languages, but also the religious aspect of his life. He was a deeply, deeply religious man, of course. He was a Catholic. And so that he must have believed that the final consolation will come in the afterlife. And of course then, you can see that both the wanderer, the Earthsteppa, in the poem The Wanderer, and the poet who composed the lament for the Rohirrim were lamenting the past, were thinking about the past, thinking about the good old romantic times that are long gone, and that we are now living in the world that is not as good as it was. And that is, of course, what Tolkien thought. He, living in the first half of the 20th century, he hated the modern world, he hated the machine, he hated the industrialization. He always wanted to live in the past. That's why he loved all the old myths and legends, romantic stories. And you can find traces of this throughout the whole Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and his vast legendarium. It is not a direct allegory to something that was very much present when he lived, but an overall motif, overall theme and feeling of his work. Because if you look, for example, at the elves, they were always thinking about the past, about Valinor, the lands of the Undying. They were always remembering it, and they always hoped that they would go there again. Because only then they can be truly happy. And so that, if you look then at the poem, which I took from a choice of Anglo-Saxon verse, my favorite collection of Anglo-Saxon poetry, in Old English, it then goes, Hwer quo merg, hwer quo macho, hwer quo mathum yifa, hwer quom simbla jesetu, hwer sindon celedreamas, la beorchtbune, la birnwiha, la theodnes trim, hu seo thrach jewaad, jenap under nicht helm, swa heono ware. Well, and then the modern English translation in this particular edition goes, Where is the horse now? Where the hero gone? Where is the bounteous lord? And where the benches for feasting? Where are all the joys of hall? Alas for the bright cup, the armoured warrior, the glory of the prince, that time is gone, passed into night, as if it had not been. So that, if you look at it, not only do the first lines of the lament for the Rohirrim correspond with this passage from the original Wanderer poem. I have decided not to read the poem in its entirety because it's 115 lines long. The video would be very long if I read it in its entirety. So not only does it correspond, not only basically Tolkien took those lines and put it in The Lord of the Rings, but also the contents and the overall theme and the message of the elegy, the lamentation, something lost, and the good times have passed already. All this is present very much, not only in this poem, not only in the history of the Rohirrim, but also within the wide scope of Tolkien's legendarium. And that is one of the billion reasons why I absolutely love the works of Professor Tolkien, why that is, for me, in my heart, the peak of modern literature, modern fantasy, because it's timeless. We will always reflect on the past. We will always think that the good times have passed, that they are gone in the past, and that now the only thing we can do is fight, struggle, and maybe in the future find consolation in whatever we believe in. Alright, my friends, let me know in the comments down below what you think about all this, and that will be all. Thank you very much for watching, and Namaste.